following is a presentation of the Fellowship Church at Anthem, a community of faith, love, and hope. For more information, please visit fellowshipanthem.com.
That's nice. I like that. That's sweet. Love that first line. Grace is what keeps me in your arms. And that's such a great concept for us. It's so foreign to religion. Because religion says it's works that's what keep you connected to God. And that's not true at all. It's really about God's grace. So would you pray with me and let's just celebrate God's grace in our lives. Really is a pleasure for us, God, to understand and to know that your grace is that sustaining force in our lives. It keeps us connected to you. And help us just really come to know that in such a deep way that we're not constantly thrown back and forth between believing that in some ways we could work hard enough or do something good enough for you to like us more. You love us completely and totally just like we are. What a radical version of love that is. And it's the kind of love that you showed us by giving up your son, Jesus, and that now you want to live through our lives. So, Lord, help us today to understand your love in a fresh way. In Jesus' name, amen. I remember it was, about 12 years ago when we were in the process of starting Fellowship Church. And Brad Tarrant and I were sitting in I think my living room over on Key Lane. And we were trying to figure out what to call Fellowship Church. We were thinking about just calling it church. But that seemed boring and already taken. And so we decided to call it, something with Anthem in the name, like Fellowship Anthem Church, something like that. And those were back in the days when Anthem was really particular about what people called themselves relative to being here. And so they said, no, you can't call yourself anything with Anthem in the name because that's our name. So we waved that off, and we finally ended up, after a lot of really just conversation saying, what do we want our church to be about? And we came up with the idea of it being about fellowship. And so we called it Fellowship Church at Anthem. And we recognized when we did that word fellowship would convey different things to different people, but it was broad enough to really connect to the core mission and vision of what we wanted this church to look like and feel like and be about. And, fellowship for us is one of those words now that it's one of those dual, it's a noun and a verb, right? It's we can fellowship together, or we can go to fellowship. It's like Google. You can Google something, or you can go to Google, right? It's a noun and a verb. And so for us, fellowship is both. It's a place, and it's something we do. It's a people, and it's also a way we live. And I remember Brad and I, and there may have been a couple others involved in the conversation, but we started talking about what it was that this community needed in its early days. And people were moving in here from all over the United States and all over the world and whatever. And a lot of people were leaving friends and family that had been long established. And so we recognized that one of the things people needed moving into this community was a sense of belonging. And so we kind of just threw in our motto, in our vision, Fellowship Church, your place to belong. And that stuck with us for a long time, and I believe that really still is kind of at the core of who we are. We are a place, and we are a people where belonging can happen. And I want to talk today about two concepts that define us as an organization, but more specifically that define us as people. And they are two of the things that really Jesus came to empower us to live our lives by, and can become two of the most elusive pieces in our lives. And what makes it so challenging for us to find these two pieces and why they are so elusive is going to be a topic of our conversation over the next few weeks. And also coming to recognize today that these two pieces are critical to human existence. They're mission critical to us living, breathing, and doing life on this planet. They're paired together. They are really the two concepts of love and belonging. Love and belonging. Now, some of us, when I mentioned the word love, you kind of turned out, you just dialed down because you're like, I don't want to talk about love because it's too squishy and, fairy tales and all that. But I want us to be a little bit more open today because I want to talk about love in some broader applications, I think. And then also I want to talk a little bit about belonging. And Brene Brown has done some really great research. She's a counselor and also a sociologist and works at a university in Houston. And she's done some terrific research, hardcore data research about these two concepts of love and belonging. And she has some really great things to say today, and I want to give you some of her data. But one of her observations is that when it comes to love and us experiencing love and us experiencing a sense of belonging, the great separator between the group of people who experience love and belonging as a way of life and those who do not is really boils down to one thing, and that is the idea that you are not worthy of love or belonging. She said it's the only thing. Age is not the separator. Gender, it's not generational. It's not ethnic. It's not intellect. It's not economics. None of those are the factors that determine whether we feel like we are loved and like we belong or whether we don't. The one separator is this idea that I just don't feel worthy to be loved or feel worthy of belonging. And it evidences itself in the way we talk sometimes. We talk about, we use a little phrase, when I, and then, we finish that phrase. When I lose 20 pounds, then I'm going to do whatever it is I'm going to do. When I, get married, then I'm going to really be in love and have a sense of belonging. When I, and whatever you finish that with, when I graduate from college, or when I earn $1 million, or when I meet the love of my life, or when I, and there's some qualifier that says, when I reach this certain level, then I will be worthy. And if we look deeply into the heart of the gospel of Jesus Christ, one of the things that we understand is that Jesus' love for us and His grace demonstrated towards us has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not I see myself as worthy. He sees me as worthy of those things just because of the fact that I am created in God's image. So what would it be like if we could let go of what others think about us and just really come to own our own story in life and begin to see ourselves as people who are worthy? That's really what happens to us, is something happens along our life story and it begins to shape our perception of ourselves, and we start going, you know what, I'm probably just not worthy of love. That's why nobody loves me. Or I'm not worthy of belonging. That's why I can never seem to find a place to connect. And if you were like to peel back the layers of your story and ask yourself the question, what is it in your story that you really would rather not get out there on the public stage? What is it in your story that you would rather people not know about you? Brené's research indicates that if we would come to a place of just owning our story, for all that it is, good and bad, light and dark, shadow and glory, all that your story is, our sense of self-worth, our sense of ability to feel and interact in loving relationships, our sense of being able to connect and feel a sense of belonging to whatever groups we connect to, it just skyrockets. Stories told of two neighbors that had come together, and they'd been living next to each other for a couple of years, and their kids played at each other's houses, and they had sleepovers and all that kind of thing. And in one neighbor's attempt to reach a new level of belonging and owning her own story, she decided one day to tell her neighbor that she was a recovering alcoholic. And so she just said, there's something I want you to know about me. She said, I just want you to know that I'm an alcoholic and I'm in recovery. And over the course of that conversation, she watched her neighbor physically change in her response towards her. So finally the neighbor said, I'm not sure I want my kids being at your house anymore. And she said, I don't understand. She said, I've been sober for 20 years of my life. And I'm the same person now that I was 10 minutes ago before I told you my story. What changed in you? Because the reality is nothing changed in me. There's something in us that once we find out about certain things in people's lives, we place a judgment on them that can disconnect us and build a wall and build a barrier and hold them back and hold them at arm's length. And we do that for ourselves because we believe there are things in our story that if people knew those things about us, they just wouldn't want anything to do with us. So what happens when we come to really own our story? We stop kind of hustling for worthiness, and we stop pretending, and we stop trying to be perfect, and we stop trying to perform in certain ways to gather people's sense of worthiness about who we are, and we just go, you know what? This is who I am. I got goodness in my life. I got junk in my life. I got warts in my life. I got beauty in my life. I got it all in my life just like you do. Let's just be. And that really is, I think, one of the things that has been distinct about Fellowship Church over 12 years. We just have let people be whoever they were. We've not tried to place this high set of expectations. Say, hey, if you want to come in here and be one of us, you've got to act like this, talk like this, behave like this. We just said, we love you whoever you are, wherever you are in your journey. Because we've all got imperfections in our life. So, I want to talk about these two concepts today, love and belonging. And a couple things before we get into it. And this is from Brené's research. She says, loving and belonging are always going to be uncertain things. And that's so true, isn't it? I mean, Peg and I have been married for 27 years. We dated for some years before that. So we've been together a long time. And I feel like I love her today more than I ever have in my life. But I feel like I love her differently than I ever have in my life. And so periodically I'll try to update her with where our love's at. And I'll just say, hey, I just want you to know that, after 27 years, I think I love you at somewhere like 84%. Right? See, it doesn't work like that, right? I mean, I'm sure at you're 30, when you hit your 30, it goes to a whole nother quantum level, which would be, honey, now I love you at 7 to the 12th power or something. Wouldn't it be great if we could quantify love? But you can't. There's not a measuring stick for it. Sometimes we tease each other and it'll be like, hey, I just want you to know I love you more than you love me. And she'll be like, A, that's impossible. B, I'm not sure what B is, but no, that's not true. And so, I mean, this whole concept of love, it's so squishy at times. We want to say, how much do you love me? How much do I love you? And in our highly competitive culture, we can sometimes start tacking out I did this and this and this for you, therefore I must love you more than you love me because you didn't do this and this and this for me. You know what? Love and belonging are both uncertain. There's no way for us to arrive at a definable, quantifiable metric for either of them. Same with belonging, right? Do you belong to Fellowship Church? Yes. How do you know? Did you sign a document? Did you drink the blood? How do you know, right? You just know. If these are your people, you know they're your people. You know you fit. Second thing that she says about love and belonging, love belongs with belonging. In all of her research, which is thousands and thousands of interviews, when she talked to people about love and belonging, almost all of them linked those two concepts together. Love and belonging belong together. She says, much like joy and gratitude belong together. When you hear people talk about joy, they automatically talk about what they're thankful for. So when you hear people talk about love, you automatically hear them talk about who they belong to as an expression of that love. Thirdly, she says that love and belonging is the deep need in all people. None of us are exempt from it. We all have different expressions of what love and belonging looks like to us. We all have different outflows. We all have different capacities to express it to ourselves and others. But at the core of who every single human being alive on this planet is today, we all need love and we all need a sense of belonging in our lives. There's no way to escape it. So let's take a look at a couple of these concepts because I love it when we come to church and we have expectations of certainty and answers, and we don't find that. And we've been about that for a long time. But I want to give you Brené's definition of love. And this, she says, came after lots and lots of research with lots and lots of people and lots of data. But this is her definition of love. This doesn't have to be yours, but let's see if it opens some things and connects some things with you. We cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known. That's scary, isn't it? And when we honor the spiritual connection that grows from that offering with trust and respect and kindness and affection. She goes on to say about love, love is not something that we give or we get. It is something that we nurture and we grow. It's a connection that can only be cultivated between two people when it exists within each of them. In other words, we can only love others as much as we love ourselves. There's a radical concept for us. Begs the question, how much do I love myself? If my ability to love my wife or my kids or my friends or my church or my community or hurting people in the world is dependent upon my love for myself, how much can I really love the people that I say I love the most? All I really have to do is look at how much I love myself. And then she says that shame and blame and disrespect and betrayal and the withholding of affection damage the roots from which love grows. Well, we know that, don't we? If you're challenged today to feel a sense of love in your life or to say you've experienced the depth of love in your life, if you went back to one of these painful pieces, you might find that shame is the limiting factor, or somebody's blamed you, or you're blaming somebody else. Well, if they hadn't done this to me, I would be more capable of receiving or giving love. Maybe someone disrespected you, they dissed you. And so today you don't see yourself as worthy of receiving love or giving love, even love to yourself. Maybe someone betrayed you. Maybe you feel like you have a really sharp dagger right in the center of your back, and it goes deep all the way to your heart because somebody betrayed you. And they damaged your capacity to experience and to grow love in your life. Or maybe somebody at some point in your journey withheld affection from you. And it damaged the roots from which love grows out of our lives. Love can only survive these injuries if they are acknowledged and healed, and if they are rare. My son and I were just having a conversation earlier this morning about people in our lives, and we were having an interesting conversation. It's kind of been a running conversation for us over the last week or so. And we're talking about judgments that we place on other people. When we see other people, we automatically place judgments on them. Oh, she's that, or oh, he's this. And sometimes those judgments, they have no substance, right? But we automatically sort of place them out there on people. And they can skew our ability to give and receive love, even if we overjudge ourselves, which happens a lot in our lives. Now, when we talk about love, The Bible has so much to say about this concept of love, and so many of the ideas that Brene presents in her definition of love are reflected in the Scriptures and in the teachings of Jesus. And it's really, really powerful to get at the core of them and begin to experience them and live them out in our lives. Romans chapter 12, Paul writes to us about love. He says, don't just pretend to love others. That would seem obvious to us, right? Don't just pretend like you love other people. Really love them. Really love them. Authentically love them. Love each other with genuine affection and delight in honoring each other. It's really interesting because our concepts of love are shaped for us at a very early age. In fact, in this passage of Scripture, this little phrase, genuine affection here, is oftentimes translated in some versions of the Scriptures like brothers and sisters. And, I grew up with a brother and a sister. I was the oldest of all of us. And I got to tell you, if you looked into the Baird children life when I was growing up, sometimes our love for each other as brothers and sisters was not obvious. It just wasn't obvious. And yet other times it was so deep and so thick and so rich, it was so apparent. And that's what Paul says. Love each other with this genuine affection, as if you are connected to each other, because you know what? You are. You are deeply and intimately connected to those around you. So, I want to give you something this morning just by way of starting the conversation rolling in your head about love, because we all approach this concept very differently. Some of us approach the idea of love from deep feelings within, from emotions. Others of us approach the idea and the concept of love from our logic side, our left brain logic. And what happens sometimes, and I see this a lot in couples, is you have one of the two approach it from one angle and the other one approach it from another angle, and it can create these violent collisions and these crashes about how we define what love looks like in our relationships. So I want to just like put this concept of love in your mind, about love really starting from a place of action. Because I think when we take a look at the Scriptures, we find God dealing with love from a place of action more than anything else. You want to know what love looks like? Here's what it looks like. Seldom does he talk about what love feels like. He tends to talk more about what it looks like when it's lived out. In fact, in 1 John chapter 3, this is what the Bible says. It says, children, there you go. Children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth of our love by our actions. So when you think about love today, I want you to think about what it's like to act in loving ways towards one another. I grew up in Oklahoma, and we have some old, hard, established ways in Oklahoma about the way we love each other. I remember a guy telling me, he'd been married for like 40-something years, and he said to his wife one day, she said, like, why didn't you never tell me that you love me, And he's like, I told you that when we got married. I told you that I loved you, and if it ever changes, I will let you know. That's not loving action, guys. What does it look like to act in loving ways? For us to, if we say we love someone, our actions should align with that intention. It should be something where people go, oh, yeah. I was sitting in a restaurant this week, and my table was really close to the people sitting next to me, and it was a couple, and it was a husband and wife, and they were close enough to me I could hear their conversation. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the volume and the intensity elevated. So I got way more into the conversation than I really wanted to. And I wasn't, sometimes you see people like sitting close to another table and they start getting interested and they start leaning that direction. I wasn't leaning that way. It just started happening, and this conversation emerged, and it was this really obvious sort of like battle going on between this husband and wife. And I hear him say to her, "You are stupid." Yeah. She and I both did that. I hear him say, "You are stupid. I can't even believe you think like that. You should know better than that. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard you say." I got to tell you, it was everything I could do not to go, "If you say that one more time, I'm going to put my finger in your eye." In love. Promise it'll be in love. Love for her, not for you. If we say we love somebody, then our actions should align themselves with that love. And what's interesting is loving action toward each other is defined by the other, not so much by us. There's a great book out there called The 5 Love Languages, and it's all about how we all speak a different love language. Peg's love language is quality time. And it took me a long time to learn that because my love languages are different. My love languages are like words of affirmation and gifts and that kind of thing. And so I would always buying her a gift, and telling her how beautiful she looked. And I thought that was speaking love to her, but I would do it like on the way out the door. Right? I'm like, "Honey, I got to go. I'll see you later. And by the way, I love you and you look awesome. And like, here's a trinket." And it took me a while to figure out she speaks a different love language. And for me to communicate to her in actions that indicate love to her, I have to do it based on her language, not my language. So when it comes to this idea of love, and that's why I think a church is such a great incubator for love, because we have the opportunity to live out our loving relationships with others. And I believe that's what fellowship's been about. The last year and a half or so, I sort of hooked onto this concept. This church is like, it's the house of love. This is the place where we come and we love each other no matter what. So what's in your story that you don't want other people to know about? What's in your story that if you think they knew about, they wouldn't love you as much? Oh, I didn't finish college. Or, oh, I went to the wrong college. Or I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, and if people knew that about me, they wouldn't love me. Or I grew up on the right side of the tracks. I grew up wealthy, and I don't want people to know that about me. Or I got a really low IQ, and if people knew that, I've faked my way through it. If people knew that, they wouldn't. Or I've got a real high IQ, and I don't want people to know that, because if they know I'm smart, then they're going to think I'm dumb. All the things in our story, Oh, I was abused as a child. If people knew that about me, they wouldn't accept me. There's so many things in our story that keep us locked in, and when those things lock us in, they keep us from experiencing this life of love. So, how do we come to a place of experiencing and owning our story and just allowing our story to be who we are? Some of you might think right now, what would it be like? What would it be like in my life to just be who I am? To be authentic, to be true, to be real with the people that are closest to me. Listen, you're not going to be able to be vulnerable with all the people in the world. Some people they're going to continue to judge you and criticize you and condemn you. So be that. That's their issue, not your issue. I want our church to be the kind of church that no matter who walks in these doors, there's love towards you. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter who you've been. It doesn't matter who you haven't been. First time in church, millionth time in church. We don't care. We love you all the same. And I believe that is one of the hallmarks of our church. And I hope that hallmark of love begins to couple itself with a sense of belonging. So let's talk about belonging for just a minute. There's a big difference between fitting in and belonging. Those are two very radically different concepts. Because fitting in is about me chameleoning my way into a group. I can put on a smile, I can put on the language, I can put on the intellect, I can put on the right wardrobe. I can do whatever I have to do to look like I fit in, but I might not really fit in. Versus belonging, where I step into a relational system and I go, you know what, these are my peeps. We belong here. I fit here. connect with these people. I love these people. These people love me. We belong to one another. There are some things. Have you ever like walked into a social group and immediately recognized, I don't fit here, I don't belong here, and it's just awkward the whole time? I know that a lot of you wouldn't guess this about me, but I was a basketball star in junior high, and in large part because of my height. But, oh God. So, I remember this story when I was thinking about belonging and how painful experience this was for me. If you ever played sports, you'll connect with this, I'm sure. But when you play sports, even like at a junior high level, high school level, you have two different uniforms. You have a light and a dark, right? Usually the dark for us was our home uniform, and the light was our away uniform. And I was really new to the whole uniform thing. And I remember going on our very first road trip, right, over to Minko. Minko Stinko, that's what we called them. We went over to Minko, and we're in the locker room, and everybody's getting dressed, right? Scott, stop. So everybody's getting dressed. And I pull my uniform out. Guys are pulling their uniforms out. And I look up, and I am the only guy in the room with the wrong color uniform on. I brought my dark uniform. Everybody else brought their light uniform. And I'm like, holy jeez, apparently I don't belong here. So, thank God we had a really on-the-ball manager, junior high manager of the basketball team. And he brought one extra top. So I put on the top. So now I have mismatched shorts and top. Less belonging. I'd rather have the same color. That way everybody thought I was the star. It's interesting when it comes to belonging. True belonging doesn't require us to change who we are. It just requires us to be who we are. So we open our lives up and we go, you know what? This is who I am. I'm the guy with red shorts and a white top. I love the boldness of some of the artists in the world. It's fascinating to me to see them live out their story. And I know sometimes they get carried away and crazy, but I love watching them live out this version of who they are. And there's something in me, I think, that longs for that, an authenticity, a desire to be my authentic self, imperfections and all. Have you ever experienced this? There's something so powerful that when you finally work up enough courage to open up and be vulnerable and like list an imperfection with somebody that's important in your life, and when you throw it out there and you wonder how the grenade's going to land in the relationship, and you're just holding your breath, and then all of a sudden the very first two words out of their mouth create this powerful and massive connection as you hear them say, "Me too." And you just go, ah. Because you recognize that you are not alone in your imperfections. Let me give you Brené's definition for belonging. Did I throw that up there? Yeah, here it is. Belonging is the innate human desire to be a part of something larger than us. Innate is very important because we're all born with it, right? We all want to be a part of something. We want to connect to something. Not just fit in, not be an appendage tacked on, not have the wrong color. We want to belong. Because this yearning is so primal, we often try to acquire it by fitting in and by seeking approval, which is not only hollow substitutes for belonging, but often barriers to it. Because true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. I don't know how you grew up, but in some of our worlds, we grew up with this very high standard about what our lives were allowed to look like. perfections, imperfections, all of that. And some of us may have grown up in environments where it shaped our sense and even warped our sense of what it is to belong. And to belong, we've got to look perfect, be perfect, act perfect, smile right, talk right, all that kind of thing. And that has warped our sense of what it is to belong. So now we just sort of fit in wherever we can. And that's not true belonging. Romans chapter 12, verses 4 to 6. We talked about this a little bit last week when we talked about connection. This is so powerful. Just as our bodies have many parts and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. There's a belonging that's built into who we are. And that powerful sense of belonging comes out if we just give it a chance. We have a couple big commitments for this fall at our church, and I want to outline those more for you in just a couple weeks. But two of our big objectives for this fall is to help reach out into this community and invite people into a spiritual journey. And we're going to be doing some very strategic things to do that and some very strategic events to make that happen. But then the next thing that's right behind that is creating an environment of belonging, connections, allowing you to come into spaces, environments, and relationships that connect to you and that allow you to feel connected. In a couple weeks, we're going to do something really fun. It's sort of our first annual BCB. It's our Back to Church brunch. And all of our ministry teams are going to be participating in this. And what we're going to do is when you come in on that Sunday morning, instead of sitting in these nice comfy chairs like this, we're going to have tables up and we're just going to have breakfast together. It's the most important meal of the day. Right? And if you grew up watching TV in the generation I did, you know that. You know it's the most important meal of the day. That's why we eat large quantities of sugar in our cereal and that kind of thing, right? But we're going to have a big brunch together, and just going to sit around tables and eat breakfast, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about where we're going as we move into the fall. But it's going to be a great chance to connect, and what I hope happens is that you come and you sit around a table and you connect with other people, and you realize that these people are just like you. They have hurts in life and pains in life. They have joys in life. They get bacon stuck in their teeth in life, just like you do. And it's so great. Peg and I were in the grocery store yesterday, and we were walking down the aisle, and I looked over, and she smiled, and she had one looked like a big thing right there, giant. And I said, "Honey, you got a thing right there." And every couple has different ways of communicating that, right? Some don't at all. They just wait and they hope you see it. But I said, "You got a thing right there." And so she goes, "Which right here?" And so we have, our own little system. Now it's like one more over. That's it. You're in it right there. So she's digging around, trying to get it out of there. Can't get it out. So finally, after a couple minutes, it's our system. It might not work for you, but then I go in, try to help her get it. And so I'm digging around in there, and finally it dislodges, and okay, suck it now, suck it. She gets it out, boom, it's gone. And I sort of had one of those moments. I was like, oh my God, right in the grocery store. Well, as I do that, she smacks me. She's like, and as she smacks me, one of the clerks from the grocery store walks by, and he sees the whole encounter happening. And then he's like smiling and laughing, and he's like, oh, yeah. It's like, it's humanity. We pretend like it doesn't. We pretend like we don't get things stuck in our teeth. We pretend like we don't help each other out. We pretend like we're embarrassed. We pretend. We cover. We perform. And the next thing you know, we're like disconnected. My hope is that our church would be a great place of belonging. So I'm going to give you a little heads up, and I want you to think about this for next week. There are some massive barriers when it comes to connection and love and belonging. Here they are: shame, fear, and vulnerability. We'll talk a little bit more about these next week, but I just want to give you some questions dealing with the first one, shame. I want you to think about these. What will people think? If you find yourself asking this question a lot, what will people think about me? Then you may be dealing with a disconnected life related to shame. You can't really love yourself yet. If that's something that comes up in your head, if that plays in the tape in your head, you can't really love yourself yet. Only when you're probably dealing with some shame in your life. You are not blank enough. You are not blank enough. You are not smart enough. You are not skinny enough. You are not shape enough. You are not young enough. You are not wealthy enough. You are not whatever. If this is a phrase that you hear echoing through your head a lot, and you fill in that blank with anything, you are not blank enough, probably dealing with some issues of shame. If you see this phrase going through your mind, no one can ever find out about blank. If there's something that just stays hidden inside of you and you keep it covered down, then probably shame is it's keeping you disconnected from the people in your life. I'm going to pretend like everything's okay. Gosh, we do this a lot. You know, how's everything going? Great. How you doing? Great. Oh, that's great. It is great. Life's great. And it's really not. And we all know it. And then I can change to fit in if I have to. These are all clues to us that we may be dealing with issues of shame in our life. And we're going to talk about what it's like to deal with that and developing a resilience to shame in our life now.